Hello dear friends, my name is Julia. I'm a local tour guide here for JC Travel Ukraine in Lviv and Lviv region. I'm happy to greet you in my native city, and today we are going to explore the main highlights in Lviv, which in my opinion are must-see. Right now we are on the Memorial of Heavenly 100 Heroes, the very modern complex that was built only in 2019. And this is the place which I'm personally proud of. First of all, this is the place of memory of what happened in Ukraine in 2013 and 14. This is also the place for reflection of what we fought for. This place not only reminds us about the revolution of dignity, but also fills us with optimism. This complex is also a great place for enjoying panorama of the old town, which belongs to UNESCO heritage.
Lviv, or the City of Lions as we usually call it, is one of the most interesting cities in Ukraine. The city with a very rich and sometimes complicated history, beautiful architecture, amazing atmosphere, and a very distinct character for sure.
The city that was built for centuries by Ukrainians, Poles, Armenians, Italians, Jews, Germans, Austrians, Greeks, and very many different ethnicities. That's why the city is so unique. This is Rynek Square, the heart of city Lviv. Rynek comes from the German word ring, which means a circle, and here we have 44 buildings around, and in the middle we have the city hall with the city hall tower.
Nowadays, the City Hall Tower, or as we call it, Ratusha, has an observation terrace on the top, so anyone can come here and climb the tower. While climbing almost 400 steps, you'll have a great opportunity to see the clock mechanism, which has been working since 1852. And we also believe if one climbs the platform and makes a wish, at the same time the clock strikes, the wish will come true for sure. The architectural ensemble of the square took shape over centuries, preserving elements and aspects of a variety of styles and epochs.
Can you imagine that buildings in Lviv didn't have numbers even till the 18th century? Instead, there were names after the last names of the owners or after some peculiarities on the facades. As an example, here you can see Palazzo Bandinelli, the building that used to belong to Roberto Bandinelli, the owner, who opened here the first post office in Lviv in early 1600s. Nowadays, this building is one of the departments of Lviv Historical Museum. You can find very many churches in Lviv, and right now I'm standing next to one of the oldest churches, Latin Cathedral. This church is the only Gothic building in Lviv that survived after the biggest fire in 1527.
The construction of the Roman Catholic Cathedral began in the middle of the 14th century and lasted over 100 years. It was built by the order of the King Casimir the Great, and the initial project of the church belonged to a famous architect of that time, Peter Straha.
The cathedral preserved in a very good condition because even during the Soviet period it was a functioning church.
In the medieval Lviv, the Latin Cathedral was considered to be the second most important building after the town hall. It was spiritual center of the town and the site of important state decrees. The church was reconstructed many times over the centuries. That's why in originally Gothic building you can find the late Baroque and Rococo as well as Neo-Gothic decorations.
The territory around Latin Cathedral used to serve as a cemetery, because during Mid Ages all Christians they believed that they should bury their relatives into the holy ground. But at the end of the 18th century the cemetery was relocated out of the town limits. The only building that remained from that time, this is the Boim's chapel. The building was built over the crypt of Boim's family. This is the unique object in our city because it hasn't been reconstructed from the time it was built in 1617.
No wonder that this iconic building is called Black Pearl of the city. And nowadays, the Boim's Chapel is a part of the Lviv Art Gallery and can be visited as a museum.
Now I would like to show you one of my favorite streets in Lviv, Armenian Street, former Armenian Quarter. As I mentioned already, there were very many different ethnicities living in Lviv starting from the 13th century. Armenian community was one of the richest communities in Lviv during Mid Ages. They had their own court, and the first bank in Lviv belonged to Armenian community. Now we are going to see the heart of former Armenian Quarter, one of the oldest Armenian churches in Europe, the Armenian Cathedral.
The interior of the church is really breathtaking. The Armenian Cathedral is one of the most special churches in our city, not only because it's one of the oldest, but also because of its paintings and mosaics. Here you can find amazing carved wooden ceiling and fresco fragments dating to the 16th century. Special attention is drawn by the Holy Trinity, a mosaic composition on the inside of the dome by a famous Polish artist, Józef Mahofer. And usually people are amazed by the Art Nouveau paintings belong to the brush of young Henrik Rosen, painted in 1920s. And by the way, this is also one of my favorite churches. I usually come here to pray or just to spend here a couple of minutes in peace and quiet.
Behind me you can see the oldest part of the church, which was built in 1363. The main part of the church was built in the 17th century, and the main entrance to the church was reconstructed at the very beginning of the 20th century. During the Soviet times, the church was closed and it was a warehouse. But as a functioning Armenian Apostolic Church, it has been functioning from 2003. Behind me you can see one of the most beautiful buildings in our city, Lviv Opera House, built in 1900 by the famous architect of that time, Zygmunt Gorgolewski.
At the end of the 19th century, Lviv was the capital of Galicia province, which belonged to Austro-Hungarian Empire. Grand Theatre, as it was called, should have emphasized the greatness of the city and became the center of cultural life. The best architects, painters, sculptors worked on the construction of Lviv Opera House. The project was led by Zygmunt Gorgolewski, the architect himself. It was one of the first buildings in Europe where the concrete foundation had been used, and also one of the first buildings in Lviv with electricity. Just imagine that the building process took only 3 years. Nowadays, Lviv Opera House is named after Solomia Krushelnitska, one of the most famous opera singers all over the world at the beginning of the 20th century. And still, the theater plays an important role in the city's cultural life, and it's one of the favorite places for tourists to go.
So, even if you are not fond of ballet or opera performances, you can go on a tour inside, and believe me, you'll love it. Today we've seen the real highlights of our city, which I strongly recommend when you visit Lviv, and I hope you'll love them as much as I do. Of course, there are many more other places to visit in Lviv, so you're always welcome to the city of lions.